So
regardless of
welcome to MYFest2024. This is today's session, the 20th of June, and I'm gonna hand it to Catherine in a moment. Here's our community agreements that you can see, and there is also the link that you can contribute to our community agreements. As Catherine mentioned in yesterday's session, today we're gonna be talking about power, so I'm gonna hand her the floor in a moment, but feel free to reach out if you have any problem, if this session, if you want to opt out from the session at any time, feel free to always do that. We have a feedback form that I'm gonna be posting within the session in the middle and in the end. Please give us some feedback. Let me or Sam know if you have any questions or if you wanted us to rename you at any moment. Without wasting too much time, I'm gonna hand it to Catherine so she can begin.
Thank you, Yasser. And I'm going to share my slides. See, I'm not on the first slide. Oh, stop the share. Let's see if I can get that back to my first slide. There we go. Right. Obviously, I didn't have enough coffee this morning before I joined you. Why does it keep doing that? Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. Try this again. Share. Put it in presentation mode. There. Okay. Does that look right for everybody?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. If you join me here today, I want to say, first of all, I'm not an expert on power. When I was doing my graduate studies, we did have critical theory courses. I remember joking with my cohort friends that I don't do power. I understand influence, I think. I grew up in the US during the 1960s and 70s. It's not a fact I share with a lot of people anymore, so you're privileged to know that. That was during a time of student protests where I was taught that all power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And of course, we had at that time a corrupt president who was subsequently impeached for trying to subvert the election process. And I didn't believe in myself as a person who cared about power and the use of power. So if you're looking for guidance from an expert, well, I will share the expertise that I have, and we will do some exploring together. So my plan is that this will be more of a reflective session than anything else. I do want to just briefly mention, if you're looking to think about power because you want to become an agent of change, I highly recommend the Facilitating Cultural Change workshops, which I went through virtually in 2021 by intercultural trainer Beth Zemsky, who works out of Minnesota. Those you would have to travel to Minnesota for, but they're worth every iota of your time and every penny, as well as an 8-workshop sequence done by Danielle Marshall and Wendy Muma on reimagining racial equity, which we'll also talk a lot about power and the power to effect social change. That's not what I'm going to do here today. We only have an hour, in fact, less than that. So for my beginning activity, I would like to encourage us to think about what power looks like, and we're going to try to co-create some understanding of power. This may take us 10 minutes, may take 20. I'm flexible about this. I'm going to ask you in a minute to either take a piece of paper or a electronic drawing program on your computer, or to collaborate with artificial intelligence, or to just use Google search to find an image that represents power to you. What does it look like to you? And then we will, if you go to this URL, I think the QR code will also take you there. We'll be at my drive for this event, and I want you to open the Visualizing Power PowerPoint and insert your image into one of the blank slides there, or add a slide if I think there should be enough slides for this intimate community. And then we will look at them and discuss them. So it's 9:10 now by my watch. I think it's 5:10 in Cairo. We'll spend about 10 minutes finding and putting together some images to put them into that PowerPoint. If the PowerPoint doesn't work, just save it on your laptop or take a picture of it. And since there are so few of us, we'll take turns sharing screen. But from now until about 9:20, please draw or find or co-create with artificial intelligence an image of what power looks like to you. Getting access denied. I was afraid of that. Look, thank you for that, letting me know. I will work on that. I'm going to stop the share while you're coming up with your images, and we'll see whether we can get that to work. I thought I had it all set up, of course. Yes. Just a moment. I'm going to try a different link for you in the chat. See if that takes you directly to the presentation. It looks like anybody with this link, looks to me like anybody with this link can edit.
Good now.
Great, thank you. I thank those of you who have quickly put images in there. We still have about 6 minutes to create or find or co-create your image. If you've put your image in there and you want to take a quick bio break or grab a cup of tea, we'll start. I think we'll start convening again at about 10:20 or 5:20. Should you be in Egypt or a similar time zone. Okay, I hope everyone is back with us. And you can see this is the slide set that we co-created together. I love this first image. Can someone claim it and tell us a little bit more?
Yes, that one is mine. And I chose an umpire because an umpire is someone during a game who awards points, who imposes penalties, and has a lot of power over how the game goes.
Sure. And probably power over how the players get rewarded almost, right? If they're,
Yes.
so, is it personally meaningful to you? Are you a sports player?
No,
Or-
it's not. It's not. I just happened to read an article today about an umpire and that's related to AI in business, etc. So
Ah,
that's the
okay,
only
so
reason why.
it was in your mind for that reason. My son and his father were not umpires but referees, and it was very interesting. Our son started refereeing for what we call soccer when he was about 13, and negotiating the power of parent expectations as a 13-year-old and how the game was supposed to go was an interesting and useful experience for him that he carries into the modern day. He's now in his 30s. Okay, our second picture looks like we've got a rowing crew. Can somebody tell us more about why they chose this one?
Yeah, I was looking for images of collective power, and a
Thank
lot
you.
of them were protesting. But I
Mhm.
thought, rather than represent the conflict and navigating that, I wanted to represent, yeah, the power of working together towards a common goal. I
Thank you.
am not a
Thank you.
rower and not much of a sports person, but it seemed like yeah, the clearest visual.
Ariel, can you tell us a little bit about why collective power is a meaningful concept for you?
Yeah, think um, I think in a long term, I think it's a more sustainable form of power than authoritative formal power. And I think, unfortunately, the latter is the one that's most often portrayed to us as being
Yep.
the kind of
Yeah.
power to aspire to.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you for sharing that. I also smiled a lot when I saw this picture. Last week, I was at a conference in France and had booked a room along a canal, and there were rowers out there every evening and on the weekends practicing. I don't know if they were practicing for the Olympics or just practicing because it was a great way to enjoy nature, but it was fun to see this come up almost come up in my feed by happenstance. I chose this one, the Great Wall of China. Kind of for two reasons. It speaks to me of the power of governments to define regions to keep people out. It metaphorically represents the Internet Great Wall, so the power of governments to control information. And it's something I'm told you can see from outer space. So that image of power, to me, the Great Wall is a very potent image of the dangers of absolute power, I guess you would say, which I spoke about at the beginning. Okay, we've got two pictures. I love the contrast here. Thank you for going above and beyond what I asked you to do. And would you like to speak more about these two pictures?
So that was me.
Thank you.
I'm Jenny. So I have a picture of the quite famous 1963 Olympic protest where first place runner and I believe the second place runner both raised their hands in a Black Power salute, in contrast to the third place runner, who is a white man who had not done so. And then next to it is Prince Charles's most recent portrait, which is a really quite vibrant red, and it could either be seen as like quite bright or like a bit grim and bloody looking. And I just think about power in two different ways. Like some of it's something you can take, right? You can like revolt against and take control of and demand. And on the other hand, there's something that some people feel they're born, some people are just born with excessive amounts of it. And I thought the contrast was interesting. The pictures came to mind today because the first picture of the protest at the Olympics came up in a conversation. I live in the UK now, and none of them had seen it before. And that was a cultural moment of interest for me because I've grown up with this picture, sort of a seminal civil rights protest kind of representation of power. So it was interesting that it wasn't part of their, well, I don't see why it would be in a completely different country, but it wasn't part of their sort of cultural framework around it. Whereas this portrait of the king is certainly that, yeah. So yeah, I thought the contrast was interesting today.
I really appreciate how you've sort of depicted the dual nature of power. Power to speak up for yourself and your people, as well as power as hierarchy, I guess I want to say. I don't know what I've got going on in my, I'm hoping you're not seeing the weirdness I'm seeing on my screen here over in one corner. You're bringing forth the picture of King Charles reminds me of what they used to say about George Bush, which was that he was born into privilege with a silver spoon in his mouth, as we say in the US, and he thought it belonged there. So power is also seductive in many ways. This is a lovely, very intense and meaningful depiction of power, and I'd love to hear more from the individual who shared this one with us.
Hi, so I had ChatGPT create this, so it's AI generated, and
Interesting. Cool. Great.
In the prompt, I told it to create an image that depicts power that like through different critical frameworks. So there's like structuralist understanding of power, right? How power is like embedded and exercised through institutions and structures. There's post-structuralist like Foucault, who says it's like through knowledge and discourse and language that power is really exercised. There's queer perspectives, feminist perspectives, critical race theory perspectives, and so forth. There's also thinking about power in terms of power over and power with. And I actually just looked it up. I really love Brené Brown, and she has this framework of power over and power with, and then also power within. And so I just really like to think about power in all of these different ways. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. See what else, what other goodies do we have here? Okay. Again, someone who has given us two lovely images, both from the African continent. Thank you for that. And I love the presidential motorcade. So we've got two views. What more can you tell us about these two?
Thank you, Katherine. This is really a wonderful conversation.
Good.
So on the one side, we have the picture of the Kenyan presidential motorcade, which shows you the wastage that we have in our resources, especially financial and human. And of course, when the president is passing, everybody stops. So the highways have to be cleared and everybody's on, and he passes like this God that we have created. At the moment, we have an uprising of Gen Z and millennials because they are tired of the wastage that is going on, and they are shooting down the finance bill that's there.
Yes, I believe you spoke about this yesterday, yes.
Yes, and this is one of the photos that appeared at the beginning, and everybody was kind of, what can millennials and Gen Z do to us? But the fact is that they make up 55.47% of the Kenyan population. And they have power, and they are showing that in the different towns of Nairobi, I mean, of Kenya as we speak.
Sure.
I'm passionate about it because I did not know that they were going to rise up, and they rose up. So probably I would have picked a different photo if this wasn't happening, but I picked this just to share with you my feelings at the moment and what we experience as a country.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
lost the
Back to
screen
you.
share.
Sorry. Back to you. Otherwise, I'll go on forever. Thank you.
Thank you. I lost the screen share. Hang on a minute. I need to re-find the document.
And as you do that, I'm requesting that people have some alternative. If you don't describe your photo on your slide, please have alternative text to say what it is because of accessibility. Yes, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, we did this so quickly. I agree with you. If we're going to share this, I do hope that folks will come back and put the put that on it. Okay, let's see if I can share this again. Here we go. That will be important to the final. Okay. This is a really interesting, and it very much represents how power works in the university that I most recently worked for, but it's not my photo. So would the one who gave it to us like to tell us more?
I would be happy to. It is, for me, it is the institution that I work in that we have we have 65 different programs at my institution, and you could have 65 silos, and actually even more because we've got different branches of the administration as well. So I think people feel very isolated, faculty feel very isolated, very alone in their work often, and don't sometimes, as you might not be surprised, feel connected even to people within their department, and they feel like there's this contest, and so it's a very negative environment. And then they see the administration really as making decisions about their lives, their livelihoods,
Yeah, sure,
without really having the knowledge. So
I would be interested, those of you who don't live and work in the US, if the silo metaphor is something that speaks to you or that is used in your local context. If somebody, could I get a yes or a no or a maybe on that from someone who doesn't live in the US?
I mean, I'm in the UK land of the similar, but not quite the same language. So we definitely talk about silos, especially in higher education.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Canada as well. In Egypt, does it make sense?
Yeah, very much so. It does make sense very much so because it's actually dependent on power, it's actually dependent on hierarchy. I would say the definition of power here is so, I wouldn't say generalized, but it's so sometimes it's not really understood well, but it's actually there. The concept and theme is there, you know.
And then looks like we have 4 more to go through. And I love this one. I was very tempted myself to put something like this up there. Could the person who shared it with us tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I kind of went literal, mostly because when I was in the shower this morning, my power went out at my house.
Aha!
did not come back on the whole time I was trying to get ready this morning, so it
Oh,
was,
and that's terrifying when
it was
you've
fresh in
got, yeah.
my mind. But it also really, when we think about it, it represents how, I mean, how much reliant we are on power. And I don't know, like I said,
Not just in the electrical sense, right?
no, yeah, no, in every sense of our world, it supports us, but it also impacts our ability to do things. And if we don't have power, we can't, there's a lot we can't do.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Anyway.
Thank you.
So it's
Okay. Lovely picture of a classroom with text beside it. Thank you. Please tell us more.
Yeah, sir, this one's yours.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank Heather because she helped me grasp this concept through a photo, which is I'm not really good at. But I would say I'm thinking about power because it's actually exerted on me as a student that
Yes.
being like in a classroom, and then the relationship between students and their faculty, or even with their staff, is impacted because of power and because of the type of profession that the faculty is like occupying. When you have like to always talk about something, then they sometimes there's always some misunderstanding, and there's always some issues arising, like that you're not qualified to talk about this, you're not qualified to contest your grade, you're not qualified to go ahead and suggest a policy, whilst you might be an advocate for something, which is in my case disability activism, and which I and sometimes when I suggested something, it was like the idea that, okay, you can't talk about this because you're still a student, or you can't comment on this because people who are older than you did it. Why you might have the good opinion behind it, or the good thought, or the wisdom behind it, or even the reason behind it, because you came through a lot of development. Probably we as young people witnessed a lot of things that sometimes older people didn't notice, like the difference or the nuance between the accommodation processes that take place between each disability and doing courses, So that's how I thought about power between students and their faculty, or sometimes students and staff members.
It's thank you for sharing, and I appreciate your frustration and your vulnerability, and how you've chosen to share those with us. When I first gave this presentation about 4 years ago, I thought, oh, I'm so wonderful. I'm looking at power. I'm recognizing I have power. I'm talking with people about how to have collaborative power together. And I happened to see the day after I gave the workshop something about power sharing in the classroom. And I thought, oh my God, I have never thought about myself. I get it, in that context, and how I might lower that power threat and be more collaborative with the students. I don't teach very often. I do give webinars a lot. I hadn't even thought about it in that context. So I think this is one that quite often gets overlooked, and I thank you for bringing it forward. Lovely photo and a nice quote by Nelson Mandela. Who would like to briefly narrate this one to us?
I put this one in, and I was thinking about, I guess my ideas first went to the ideas of critical pedagogy, where teachers ask their students to question this hierarchy that we're talking about in power, in education especially, and how can you use it to change the world. And it's just symbolized by an ocean wave, which changes a lot all the time.
I'm not really surprised that AI came up with a picture that's very reminiscent of the iconic. I think it's Hokusai version of a tidal wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, and then I think this is our last contribution of what power looks like. Again, we go back to aquatic metaphors. And can our contributor please narrate a little bit about this one, why you chose it?
So this is me, and I do paddle. And
Okay.
I do sports. I'm actually the middle person in the photo on the right. So the one photo is a dragon boat team looking quite intense, doing some practice races on a river in the middle of a city. There's trees behind and then some high-rise buildings. And the second photo is three people holding paddles on a beach in a figure skating pose. And
okay.
so they kind of go together for me because one, I coach, and I'm very attracted to Meg Wheatley's description of hosting leaders, which have power, but they use that power to create space for the community to be what they can be, instead of telling them what they should be. And so when you create that space, you can have people who are both super intense and can look angry and gross and sweaty and all of those things, and also people who can have incredible power while looking very beautiful. And so I both dragon and was a figure skater.
And getting healthier and healthier, right? Because all that good exercise and stuff. When I look at these two photos, I'm really struck with something that has never struck me before about power, and that is really the joy of collaborative transformative power. And so I'm really grateful to you for sharing these two
The other
images
thing that
with
I was
us.
going to say is there's power in being who you are, and
Thank you.
being able to be who you
Yes.
are.
Yes, thank you.
And so, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm gonna stop sharing this. I do have more slides, and I'm gonna kind of pick and choose between them for the remainder of our 20 minutes. I first started talking about power because I found that many of us who are in middle management, or we're not at the top of the pyramid in our profession or in our life, as the case may be, we frequently think we're powerless. It's easy to feel that the change that we want is not going to happen. I borrowed this image, obviously, from the Hollywood film In the Heights, and there's a point in the film where the power goes out in New York City and everybody's frantic and saying we're powerless. And then, of course, because it's a Hollywood musical, one of the actresses, one of the older, reminds the community, you know, we've got this, we're Puerto Ricans, we know how to live and have fun in the heat. We have resilience, we have the power of tradition, we have the power of community. Let's all have a party and eat and sing more because of course it's a Hollywood musical. And I kind of want to help folks remember that we have power, even when we're not seeing the change, even when we're wanting to try to be that change and getting frustrated by it, as Yasser spoke about it just so eloquently a few moments before. So I think I'm going to be able to go forward. Power is the capacity to influence others, to make someone do what he or she maybe wouldn't already have done, or to help them do what they were afraid to do. It's the potential of influence, and the strength to bring about societal change in that sense, as Dr. King reminds us. It's not only desirable but necessary. So my younger thoughts about power may have had some validity, but I grew up thinking that all power was a bad thing and not really understanding the duality and the potential of power. Raven and King think there are 6 types of power. You will have this PowerPoint. I'm not going to read it all to you. I've already put it in that slide that you know that you know how to visit, and that I think Yasser will put in for me afterwards into the MYFest folder in some manner. If you want to take a copy of this image, there's a quiz about what kind of leadership power you typically use, and I find this a useful reflective tool. It takes about 10 minutes. Since it does take 10 minutes and that's all we've got left at the moment, we're not going to do this activity today, and I hope you'll forgive me. The discussion around the images was just richer and more wonderful than I thought. Influence. Influence, as I told you, was what I was comfortable with. Cialdini has written a book about types of influence. It's called The Power of Persuasion. It's actually quite scary. We did it as a group reading in one of my working communities earlier this year. It talks, a lot of its stuff is about how marketers and social media influence us, and whether we are, it makes you feel like you're powerless against what these folks are doing. But when you can name the power and transform it to your purposes, that also, as we've talked about, is transformative. A big thing I want to mention, and I think some of you all in here about it, power in oppressive racist systems is hoarded and seen as limited. The reason that these systems set up social hierarchies, whether they're of the ruler and the ruled, or this ethnicity and that ethnicity, or this gender and that gender, and oh my gosh, are there other genders? It's because power is seen as limited. In the systems are set up that those in power feel threatened when anyone suggests changes, and we heard that again from one of our discussions earlier this morning. You're too young, you're too emotional, you're misinformed. I got these, you'll see the URL there, from a website called Divorcing White Supremacy Culture. White supremacy is, of course, the oppressive system that has been built up in the US and also in colonial nations. And the thing I like about this particular website is it lists antidotes to power hoarding. I have given you in that folder, again, I'll go back and make sure it's available to everybody after we're done today. Antidotes to power hoarding. So the joy that we felt in sharing this morning is an antidote to power hoarding and to oppression. And as leaders, what I heard was that we do know that change is inevitable. I heard a lot of telling me more and embodying the principle of collective thinking. So I'm grateful to you for that. Another resource I want to share is, so we often think of power as money or the display of wealth, power as the person who could, if they only got behind our cause, they could help us do something. This particular bingo game, and you can download it from the website I've given you there, was created by a small company of persons of marginalized identity here in the USA. And they wanted to call out some of the ways in which we unknowingly hoard power or keep those around us powerless. So for example, in my context, working at an engineering school, show me the data. And for one thing, data is limited. Not everybody can see it, but also there's the feeling that only data has meaning, not people's feelings, not their emotions, not their lived experiences, but only data. If your name is in a square, so if you play this with a group, or you look at this group as you're trying to better understand power and how we unknowingly can hoard power, or those around us can unknowingly hoard power. If any of these have happened to you in a meeting or social, you fail at your bingo. So this is a satirical game that's supposed to help ourselves and others recognize what power looks like. And one more thing, and then maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about the continuing the story of Katherine and her understanding of power, just to express the duality. I just found the We Rise toolkit yesterday as I was trying to figure out activities that were right for this group. They have a lot of activities about transforming power, including a reflection tool that's called the Flower of Power, I think, if I've got it right. The Power Flower. And this is where I'll go into my story to kind of figure out how you might use it. There are directions for using it as a teacher or as a reflection tool if you go to the URL. When I began working 10 years ago at the Research One University here in Indiana, I had the power of a presidential initiative and a dean who thought that measuring learning was important. And I sat in a little office talking to people, trying to figure out how we were going to create a culture of intercultural learning. So when I came into that position, as I look at this flower, I was first of all white. I had the power of authority. I had a high degree of education around intercultural competence. And I also had what you might call, what are ordinarily seen as power deficits, such as being female in the US. Around the outside, we had a power structure that was white male, about on average about 50 years ago, very well educated, not predominantly Catholic in this case. But I was similar enough in many of these characteristics that I wasn't seen as a threat. That's important if you're trying to institute institutional change. And a thing I noticed, often when we hold power, we don't recognize that it's power. So I'm talking to you about it today because I've done work around power. But at the time, I kept having people drop into my office who also worked for the same dean, talking about, let's have a cup of coffee and here are some things we think need to be changed at this institution. And I remember in the first few weeks of working at the position that I would, at the end of the day, I would think, somebody has mistaken me for a person of power. It took me a long time to realize that, in fact, I was vested with power, even though I was white, even though I was female, even though I didn't know this institution well. By virtue of having been kind of, as it were, knighted by the dean and the presidential experience, and I began to do some work on how I could use that power for good, which I won't go into here. I'm going to stop sharing. I will invite a few last comments about power or how power has worked for you. And I apologize for not having 3 more hours where we could do more fun activities together, but I'm very grateful for the time that you've given to me and to each other this morning, or this afternoon if you're in Cairo. I will accept thoughts, questions, feedback, and thank you, Yasser, for sharing my slides. You're welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for contributing.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for giving us this, you know, time to reflect and to make sure that, you know, everybody voices their own, you know, reflections in a way that is as honestly as possible and as, you know, explicit as possible. Because I know that sometimes that could be sometimes very hard and risky to talk about power and institutional change. But yeah, you've made it a safe space, and thank you so
Thank you.
much.
I was really going for that. It's so easy to get discouraged when you talk about power and to talk about the ways in which we have failed to leverage our power. And so I wanted to free up from that paradigm and yeah. Thanks for giving
Thank
me
you.
the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you.